We're about ready to begin, folks. Thank you for tuning in. All right. I think we're about ready to go here. There we are. Nat's kind of hiding behind her microphone there. You can adjust that as you need. It's been a while since she's joined us, so she's not completely comfortable yet, maybe.
I've got a kitten on my lap, so Marmite's more comfortable than I am right now, and I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with my discomfort.
Here, I'm going to feed your mic a bit more.
Alright. How's that? Oh no. Da?
Right
Da?
more into
Good?
it there,
Da?
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That one isn't very forgiving, so.
Oh, okay. Well, neither am I.
All right, let's get the music. All right. Well, usually, like, as the music's playing, I do, like, the introduction thing. But I didn't do that this time because we're not super professional here at the Rough Report. I think that's why well, not only the whole play on words with the rough go, but, like, it's
Kinda rough.
It's kind of rough.
Mm.
It's a rough around the edges show. What can we say? Okay, so what do we got here? What are we doing? All right, yeah. Just gonna go over the minutes for you.
The Beast Awakens.
Yeah. Oh, we got Marmite here joining us, co-host joining us on the show today. So we're gonna be talking about Canadian news and COVID-19, and then some American news and what the political landscape looks like down there and how it relates to us up here and what we should be concerned about. And then the controversy surrounding the Netflix film Cuties. We're going to be talking about that. To my dismay, we're going to be talking about that. And yeah, so that basically is the minutes of the program. So thank you to everybody for joining us. Leave your questions and comments as we go along. We want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. You can direct your questions to Marmite as well.
Yes,
I shall
yeah. If
answer
you have
on her
anything to
behalf.
say to Marmite, she is also taking questions.
Mm.
Okay, so where's my stuff on? All right, so Nat can actually attest to a bit of personal experience in this one.
Mm.
Here, I'm going to throw that up on the screen. O'Toole slams government over COVID-19 testing after waiting hours at the Ottawa site. Nat just recently tried to get a COVID-19 test here in Toronto.
Unsuccessfully.
Unsuccessfully.
Yeah, because I'm working either between 8 to 4 or 10 to 6. And most testings, like, for example, the testing site at St. Michael's, it's ostensibly open from like 8 till, I think they say 8 till 6. But they stop accepting people in line when it gets too long. So it's one of those things where it doesn't really matter what time it's open till. It's like if you can't make it there early enough, then you're out of luck. And if you're trying to get it done before work, if you're not in line early enough, then you're out of luck. If you try to get done your lunch, as I tried the one day, you're out of luck. The one day I tried, it was a week ago Wednesday. I stood in the line, and it literally did not move. Right, so this line wasn't really longer than it had been previous times when I turned, because I've gotten tested twice, one end of June, one end of July, and those times, like, line wasn't as long in June. I think it was about as long in July, but the line actually moved in July. This time, the only time the line moved during the 45 minutes I was there was when people gave up and left. So
by the reports of it, 45 minutes is a short amount of time. So
well, that's just the amount of time that I was like standing in line before I gave up because it was my lunch and I had to get back, right?
Well, what's interesting about this is that, of all people, slamming the government for not being able to provide adequate healthcare services such as COVID-19 testing, we have it coming from our new conservative leader in Erin O'Toole. Yeah. What does he blame this on? Well, conservative leader Erin O'Toole was later tested at a Quebec site that serves MPs and their families. I guess he went to a regular one first. And Erin O'Toole denounced the current state of COVID-19 testing in Canada after his family waited hours at an Ottawa site Wednesday only to be turned away because of capacity issues.
Yeah, my guy, guess who's heading the government of Ontario right now?
Yeah. I'm
Isn't
quite certain they have a bit of responsibility in the healthcare situation there.
Right?
Yeah, Lacey says 90 to 120 minutes is what her wait time was. That's
a couple weeks ago, but like it's gotten worse since then.
Yeah,
and I've been checking on Reddit and stuff, and yeah, people are waiting like significant periods of time, hours and hours.
He says, while waiting in the COVID-19 testing lineup, I was struck by how many families were waiting for just like ours. Children are being sent home from school to get tested, and it's hard for moms and dads to keep them calm. Again, all of like this current situation that we're facing in Ontario and our healthcare system in testing is more to do with our lack of funding and preparedness for a pandemic, both to the fault of liberals and conservatives alike. But honestly, historically speaking, who has damaged the healthcare funding and the prioritization of healthcare, specifically in this province, but countrywide? This is you guys. So, of course, what he blames it on is he goes on to say that he blames it on the Liberals and Justin Trudeau not adapting more of the faster and more technological testing that has come through over the recent history. And it's like, okay, maybe that's a valid criticism. I'm not sure what the logistics are behind that and why we don't have access to these supposed speedier tests. Talk about that. Spend your time talking about that, Erin O'Toole. But if you're going to ignore the fact that this comes down to a funding issue, of course he's going to ignore that fact. just of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always with these people. It's always going to be like, bootstraps. You're not working hard enough. Kind of like that whole boomer
But then
thing
he
of
got
no
to
wage,
go-
only spend, right?
Yeah, and like not to mention he got to go to a testing site that specialty gives special service to MPs and their families.
Yeah.
So he didn't even have to like be subjected to this. He has that benefit, and it's
Mhm.
like, oh gee, man, like imagine if kind of everybody had that benefit.
Yeah.
Wouldn't,
Imagine
wouldn't
if
that be nice?
Yeah, imagine if conservatives had like any fucking inclination towards funding public services.
Yeah. But he'll take that, perk of his job via
Oh, yeah.
public services.
Yeah, like he's earned it. Everyone else can rot. right?
Yeah. Screw everyone else. That would be the kind of right-leaning liberal-esque mentality, wouldn't it? So moving on in the COVID-19 Canadian talk. Of course, we're seeing cases go on the rise. To
Naturally.
almost no one's surprise, to anyone that was paying attention, reasonably so, expected this to happen. All the talk about like the second wave and everything like that was bound to happen, right? So Ontario rolls back gathering limits in some areas as 293 new COVID-19 cases are reported. This was just posted today, this morning. Yeah, we're between schools starting to reopen, relaxing more on social gatherings, cases going up was bound to happen, and they are going to be extremely apprehensive to, kind of introduce some sort of phase 2 measures like we had several months ago. Because at this point, like kind of vis-a-vis what Trump was revealed as saying as when he didn't want to cause a panic, akin to that, it's they are seriously worried about the economy and keeping people working. And that is their greatest fear over people's health because, again, worldwide, we were so adequately underprepared for this.
Yeah. So it's the same boomer thing of no health, only work, right? No wage, only spend. No health, only work.
Yeah. Thank you,
Oh.
Doug. I appreciate that. That is kind of you to say.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, like in terms of the rolls back gathering limits, so they've rolled back gathering limits to 10 people, and yet class sizes can be what, 30?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like Andrew Horvath tried with the
Let's
leader
go to
of
that
the
tweet.
Ontario NDP, tried putting forward a motion
gonna
to
blow
cap
that up
classes
for a
at
second here.
15, and then the Ford government unanimously voted no. So the Ford government is saying that no more than 10 indoors is safe, but
Yeah.
he's
So-
not gonna include classrooms. Like, come on.
That is really something, yeah. And
Yeah, like
so she
we-
had a good idea in this,
Yeah.
and something that was reasonable, and it should be able to be done. We are stressing out our teachers and our resources when it comes to this, and
Yeah.
it's not going to end well.
And so, like, you can harp all you want on, party goers and stuff,
Mhm.
but when kids can't socially isolate, they're going to get sick and they're going to
Yeah.
bring that home. I mean, we see this, like,
No, it's
every
enough-
school
it-
year.
It's enough of a nightmare for a lot of kids to go to school, period.
Yeah.
Imagine like going to school in this. In fact, I want to turn to a Facebook post that I shared. It was a public post from a friend of mine who is a teacher. So I will read this to you, and it's just a little taste of I think the experience of what people are going through. He says, "This is hard, really, really hard. Practically every effective teaching tool I have developed in my 20 years of practice is inaccessible, with students confined to desks facing the front in a distance that precludes peer-to-peer or small group conversation. The classroom feels cavernous with only 9 students in it. In the case of his class, I guess he only has 9. I'm not sure what particular class he's teaching or the circumstance there. But 9, nervous, lonely, socially distant, but wanting to make new friends or see old friends, 14-year-olds. Each hidden behind a mask 2 meters away from potentially their new best friend. 150 minutes is an eternity with all these restrictions on movement and interaction. Nothing about this even approximate good teaching or good learning. The system is designed to throw us back to 1950 without even the small joy of hanging out before and after school or at lunch. 14-year-old me would have gone bananas. 50-year-old me is close. And we get to do it all over again tomorrow with another half class of anxious grade 9s. My great challenge for the year is to find room for all of us to be human in these institutional constraints. Hug your kids when they get home today and your teachers.
Yeah.
I can't possibly imagine what it's like to work or learn under those kind of conditions.
Yeah, all the parents and teachers I know are just stressed to the tits, and rightfully so. Even people who aren't teachers or kids or have kids, we're still going to come into contact with parents or children, right? Like, just we're not a walled off society. We interact like.
Yeah, the social interaction, I feel, is one of the most important kind of aspects to learning.
Sure, but it was also one of the reasons why that 10-person bubble was such a loosey-goosey theory, because we bubble bigger than that, right? And so now with the kids and teachers being virus vectors, that puts everyone at risk. And back to what Lacey was saying, second wave easily could have been delayed and minimized if people are willing to behave. Government is actually supporting citizens. It shouldn't be, well, we knew this would happen. It shouldn't be, it absolutely did not have to be this bad, this fast. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that in the beginning, we had all these opportunities, but there just was not the political will to do the hard things of going against the grain of capitalism, basically, and giving everyone we had CERB, but even that, almost immediately, there's that messaging of, if you're collecting CERB and aren't eligible, then you're like leeching off the system. Those messages came immediately, just to make sure that no one was comfortable with this situation.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that like enough people didn't think that it was feasible to be permanent, so that they could pretend that it never could be permanent, right? Because giving a universal basic income would improve the quality of life for everybody, not just
actually I do. Yeah, I want to touch on the UBI point a little bit more, but I just want to get to Jessica's comment really quick. She had to pull her kid because they couldn't support his epilepsy. Of course, they couldn't support his needs and COVID if he went back to school. And then the remote learning is impossible, and that's what I particularly wanted to read her comment about, is the fact that people who are trying to go this remote learning method, some of them are having an okay time with it. I think if you're naturally a little more technologically apt, but a lot of people aren't, especially if you have any sort of, a child like hers who has a photosensitive disorder or any kind of special needs, trying to stick them in front of the computer to stay still and pay attention. I remember what it was like to be a kid. I don't think I would have been capable of that. That is... Oh, okay, we're getting the distortion. Thank you for letting me know. I know how to fix it. Let me know if that fixed it. That usually does.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, indeed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nuts. And then to go back to the point, the reason that they're your point about UBI, huge reason, and then I sort of touched on previously that they're forcing kids to go back to school is it serves the industrial complex of forcing people to go back to work.
Yeah.
Yay, thank you. I hate that it randomly does that, but I appreciate you guys for letting me know when it does. So, sorry, what was I saying?
Oh, you're just talking about UBI.
Oh,
and
yeah.
their-
And, it's to force people to keep working. If we had UBI, this question circling around providing adequate education in these circumstances would be so much less stressful.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of maddening that we have known for a while that our educational system is often just trying to bash round pegs into square holes.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID has just... They're trying to bash harder. Like,
Yeah.
they're not trying to necessarily figure out different ways of doing it. If they were, they would absolutely do the smaller class sizes. And recognize that, having mandatory online classes, like, that doesn't work for everybody. And
Yep.
trying to figure out more personalized education plans for kids, right? But if the point isn't to make sure that every kid has an adequate education, but to just meet some sort of quota that doesn't actually mean anything other than numbers on a sheet of paper, then, well, I mean, basically we're going to have a bunch of people who are media illiterate and don't know how to learn on their own and to practice, what's the word I'm looking for? Learned editing. I don't know. I can't think of the word. Right? See? School failed me.
Yeah. And speaking of education failing people, people kind of have a convenient way of forgetting their history, forgetting perhaps what they learned about World War II, or perhaps they didn't learn the right things about the rise of fascism in Europe. But I'm going to show you a tweet. Now, this is not a new tweet. I don't know how I didn't notice this, but this goes back to February 5th of this year, where Trump tweeted this video.
I'm wincing because this is uncomfortable.
It's madly uncomfortable. Let me show you this. And how long Trump has been flirting with this kind of idea.
Yeah.
You can almost already tell from that
And
shot.
it's actually Trump who tweeted this.
Yeah, this came from Trump's official account. Okay, so I have so many questions. Like, who made that? Like, did what his people made that? Because like that was a video uploaded to his account. He didn't retweet it from somebody else. That was like uploaded to the Donald Trump Twitter, right? So like, where did that come from? It's okay. So there's that. That's just like, it's bonkers. It's silly. It seems like it's a joke. But he's been kind of like hammering and flirting at this for a while.
Yeah.
And all these little pieces of evidence show it. And anybody who is a learned person in studying the rise of fascism and how it swept through Europe, namely in Italy and Germany, what those conditions looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And the parallels are astounding. And so to kind of continuously play this off as if it's just, it's just, political manipulation. Well, yeah, it is, but it's not, to say it's just that and playing it off as if it isn't serious or this is normal. I think we're playing a dangerous game when we do that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just a joke. Can't you take a joke? No, I fucking can't when it's the fucking president.
Yeah, there's just
Like,
some things you
Jesus
don't
Christ.
joke about.
Yeah. Like, especially how
repeatedly.
yeah, consistently.
Yeah, repeatedly, and then doing things like, sending your kind of secret police Gestapo into Portland and making people disappear and stuff.
Yeah.
It ceases to be a joke at some point, and it's just sadistic and weird. And then when you add this, a man who should literally be in jail right now, but he is not because he has a buddy in Donald Trump. Roger Stone calls for Trump to declare martial law to seize power if he loses. There's Trump or Roger Stone just out and out saying this. Now, Roger Stone is kind of Trump's main propaganda boy, right? He's like that's his figure. He's the the Goebbels, so to speak. And this was just said 5 days ago. On the 12th is when this story was posted.
And here's the thing: is that like if Trudeau, for example, said something like that, people would lose their fucking shit, and rightly so, because we shouldn't have authoritarians in power, no matter what party title they hold.
Mm-hmm.
But just this utter fucking gaslighting in the media of folks trying to pretend that all things being equal when all things aren't fucking equal. They are absolutely fucking not.
Yeah. The stuff doesn't exist in a vacuum.
No, they don't. And to try to get people to pretend it does, it's like, oh well, no, like that's taken out of context, or just you're putting 2 and 2 and getting 5, right? Like people aren't people can't read and actually like see what is actually fucking going on. It is outright maddening. And what's also maddening is just the media still trying to use a tone where this might be okay. Nothing about this is okay. They need to stop saying it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if that looks partisan. Yeah, I'm partisan against fascism. Like, you should be too.
All these like news stations, when push comes to shove, they'll talk about what is in denial of basic American or liberal values. They'll go there, but in nothing that Trump does do they go there. Like they'll have their little like righteous speech every now and then in some sort of editorialized segment, but on the day to day they legitimize this constantly.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of issue with your supposed liberal dominated media, not the fact that it's supposedly liberal dominated and that it's biased. It's that they are so hell bent on this appearance of neutrality that they'll act against their own interest and everybody else's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they basically how's that phrasing go? I don't know, just for the sake of everything looking fine, they just ignore the house on fire.
Yeah.
It's like, you're being disruptive for pointing out that the house is on fire. Can you please stop being disruptive?
Yeah. And like, luckily we don't have, like, there's a lot of problems in the sort of romanticization of certain fascist and anti-progressive thinking here in Canada. We're not short on it, but it's obviously not as extreme as what we're seeing in the United States, and how bold and loud and how much attention it gets and how kind of casually legitimized it gets. And, it's like the same problems exist, just not to the same extreme degree, right? But I think it is so worth us paying attention to that problem and understanding it, because I think if things sort of continue down this path, we're only a few years away from it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, if you look at what Ford is trying to do, if you look at what Kenny is doing, if you look at O'Toole's history and platform, like what's going on down south is what the Canadian Conservative parties want to happen up here. They're not even being sly about it, right? And the fact that Doug didn't immediately shit the bed on COVID doesn't mean that he's doing a good job or that he's changed or that he's a good leader. He is.
Or that he wasn't actively as negative an impact on his people as Donald Trump is.
Yeah.
Like, you expected him to be that bad, and he just slightly wasn't.
Yeah.
And so suddenly that's, like, okay or something.
That's, like, good enough. Like, oh, like, he didn't shoot a baby in the face live on the air. I guess this isn't such a bad guy after all. No, he is a bad man.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
And kind of connecting this to Canadian politics, too, and, like, the sentiments in this country, there was a long time where we were sort of, and because of the Liberal Party's policies, no less, you know, just to remain transparent about that, we had one of the most notoriously best immigration systems on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, kind of envy of the first world, so to speak, in terms of the level of opportunity we could offer people coming in. And even then, it wasn't a difficult, or it wasn't like an easy ride, just become a Canadian citizen, although there was a lot of right-wing propaganda that says that and still says that. And the sentiments surrounding immigrants coming to this country is fiercely negative amongst conservative crowds. And, you know, this is, I think, strongly an influence of what we're seeing in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of echoes up here. And how we have a tendency to view and dehumanize people that, like, for the clip I'm about to show, I want the Canadian viewers to know and understand that the type of people that would be 100% okay with this are in no shortage in this country. So yeah.
You talk about in the complaint a hearing from women who are detained there, talking about a specific
in
doctor
the ICE facilities
performing hysterectomies, referring to him as a uterus collector. Tell us about how you heard about this doctor and what women said about their experiences with him.
You have detained women. I had several detained women on numerous occasions that would come to me and say, Miss Wooten, I had a hysterectomy. Why? I had no answers as to why they had those procedures. And one lady walked up to me here this last time around between October of 19 until July the 2nd. And she said, what is he? Is he the uterus collector? Does he collect uteruses? And I asked her, what does she mean? And she says, everybody that I talked to has had a hysterectomy. And you just don't know what to say. I mean, I don't have a answer for why that they would come to me and they would say, is he the uterus collector?
So, yeah, in this particular instance involving Ms. Wooten, this particular whistleblower, it seems that it's coming down to, you know, this particular facility and this particular doctor. But when you're talking about this level of kind of, you know, if one doctor can get away with a practice like this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we already know that these ICE facilities are effectively concentration camps. It is not an egregious comparison to say that, especially when this can happen.
Mm-hmm.
That it takes this whistleblower to be brave enough to come forward and say these things. You know, and again, there's no shortage of people in our government, in our voting populace, that would be all right with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shocking and it's horrifying, but that's the reality of what we're facing when you're talking about a lot of the xenophobic, anti-liberal rage that exists as a basis for a lot of these people's political ideology.
Yeah. And like just to be clear, forced sterilization is part of genocide, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's not mince
It's
words.
absolutely against, every, I think, like, UN war, law, this, Geneva Conventions, whatever.
Yeah.
There is nowhere on earth that this would be considered legally okay, except apparently the United States.
Yeah. And like, so on top of sterilizing these women, don't forget that these facilities are also notoriously cramped and don't have good sanitation. And so even if these women are being sterilized, it puts them at even greater risk of disability and death from infection. Like, there's so much going on that
Yeah.
they are just in even
How like I'm just trying to put myself like in this idea that like you wake up and your ability to reproduce has been robbed from you.
Yeah.
Like it's horrifying and mentally damaging and traumatic enough when something like that can happen, the result of like just a medical condition, something that's out of your control. But to have it done
even
to
if
you
it's
in
something
some sort
that
of
happens-
institutional or systemic fashion.
Yeah, like even if it happens by nature, by like
Yeah.
cancer or something like that, that's one thing. But
Yeah.
then when it's done by an institution, then that's yeah. And make no mistake, a part of separating children from their parents is they are trying to traumatize people.
Yeah.
Like the Trump administration, like they know that removing kids from their families is traumatizing, and they want the message to get out to folks in other countries that the United States is not safe because of look at all the horrific shit that they're doing. Don't come here, right?
Yeah. It's
And-
a scare tactic. It's propaganda, but like propaganda in its most kind of active and violent form. It's horrifying, and again, like I can only emphasize that there are people here that would think this is okay, like, or that that it's rooted in anti-liberal sentiment, which is something I want to touch on. And like I think, like I've kind of segue into this. I'm trying to anyway. That there is. I've tried to spend a lot of time over the recent understanding the other side, so to speak, like what the conservative ideology is, where it comes from, how people become rooted in it, particularly working class people, where economically speaking it would be largely against their interests and actively works against their interests. And of course, this is something I've done in the past, when I'm in my early 20s and in a certain struggle to understand certain issues and people and things like that. It's something you come around to every now and then. So I find myself in this cycle of like, okay, let's take a step back from my bubble and my ideology and try and understand this situation a little bit better and have some empathy and try and unpack it in a way I didn't previously think of, perhaps. And but then I know that there's problems in that, that this isn't something that, the most vulnerable people should expose themselves to, that this isn't necessarily the most effective thing, that you could, if you aren't responsible about it, you could be legitimizing something that you didn't intend to legitimize. There could be all sorts of problems in it. And I think what I'm about to read kind of highlights one of those problems, and what that to a certain extent it just doesn't go into that you can teach people something or show them a better way, that it's rooted in a cultural moral difference that is it just goes beyond helping. And I think someone here kind of it's semi-anonymous, but it makes a statement, that's for sure. So The feminist news page on Facebook posted this in this image, this image of Trump supporters that are, very angry looking. I think I saw this image associated with a meme that said, "There is no hate quite like Christian love," and it was the same kind of series of pictures, which is apt as well. So, yeah, I need to get my hair cut. Keeps getting in my face. So let me just read this quick little blurb here. So the question was posed. I'm quoting it now. The question was posed, why do people continue supporting Trump no matter what he does? A lady named Bev answered it this way. I just like how it said a lady named Bev. This could have been just totally written by anybody, but I think it speaks to a certain point regardless. You all don't get it. I live in Trump country in the Ozarks in southern Mississippi, one of the last places where the KKK still has a relatively strong established presence. They don't give a shit what he does. He's just something to rally around and hate liberals. That's it, period. He absolutely realizes that and plays it up. They love it. He knows they love it. The fact that people act like it's anything other than that proves to them that the liberals are idiots. All the more reason for high fives all around. If you keep getting caught up in why do they not realize this problem and how can they still back Trump after this scandal, then you do not understand what the underlying motivation factor of his support is. It's fuck liberals. That's pretty much it. Have you noticed he can do pretty much anything imaginable and they'll explain some way that rationalizes it that makes zero logical sense, or I might add, any sense of hypocrisy or irony. Because they're not even keeping track of any coherent narrative. That is irrelevant. Fuck liberals is the only relevant thing. Trust me, I know firsthand what I'm talking about. That's why they just laugh at it all, because you all don't even realize that they truly don't give a fuck about whatever the conversation is about. It's just a side mission story that doesn't matter anyway. That's just all trivial details. The economy, healthcare, whatever. The point is, fuck liberals. Look at the issue with not wearing the masks. I can tell you what that's about. It's about exposing fear. They're playing chicken with nature, and whoever flinches just move down their internal little pecking order one step closer to just being a liberal. They've got to understand the one core value that they hold above all others is hatred for what they consider weakness, because that's what they believe strength is, hatred of weakness. And I mean passionate, sadistic hatred. And I'm not exaggerating, believe me, sadistic, passionate hatred, and that's what proves they're strong, their passionate hatred for weakness. Sometimes they will lump vulnerability in with weakness. They do that because people tend to start humbling themselves when they're in some compromising or overwhelming circumstance, and to them that's an obvious sign of weakness. Kindness, weakness. Honesty is weakness. Compromise is weakness. They consider their very existence to be superior in every way to anyone who doesn't hate weakness as much as they do. They consider liberals to be weak. Only a couple sentences left, but I think you got the point, that the concept of being good to each other, politically speaking, is weakness, right? Mm-hmm. It comes from such a deeply rooted sense of insecurity that it comes in the form of anti-liberal hatred. And again, there is no shortage of that in here in Canada.
Absolutely. I mean, people voted for Doug because they weren't for Doug. They were anti-liberal.
Yeah.
That's literally
they hated
why.
Kathleen Wynne.
Yeah.
It was fuck the liberals.
Yeah,
That's
he had
it.
no platform. They literally voted against anything, not for anything, right? And I think it's hilarious that using this, the Republicans just disdain for looking into anything. This is how a trans woman in the U.S. Who's a Satanist and who ran a platform of fuck the police won the Republican nomination for sheriff in a town because she ran as a Republican and no one fucking checked. And she was open about it too.
Yeah.
She's like, I was very open about my platform. Like, if you feel bamboozled, maybe you should have fucking checked.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't hide anything. I literally just called myself a Republican,
that's
here
pretty
I
good.
am.
I remember seeing that story, but I didn't read more into it. That's pretty great.
Yeah,
I like
right?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's excellent to hear.
Yeah, I think that honestly, trying to play the game on other people's terms sucks. So, like, let's make up new terms, right?
Yeah.
So if people are just going to blindly vote Republican, cool, I'm Republican now.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not like the title means anything to them anyways.
Yeah.
They don't fucking stand
The,
for
the,
anything.
the title doesn't mean anything. I think, like,
No.
in speaking to this, like, this kind of passionate hatred of liberal things that you see so many examples of here in Canada, like any sort of weird gaffe or silly thing that Trudeau does, the conservative narrative that grips a hold of it and tries to capitalize it for weeks on end it's cartoonish and silly, but again, it's driven by this sense of they have to hate this stuff. They have to hate the fact that he presents himself as a nice guy. And and the fact that he's a nice guy who's head of the Liberal Party is just peak cuck soy boy weakness.
No wonder why all the conservative leaders are so fucking unlikable.
Yeah.
Jesus
It's just it.
Christ.
I think, like, that's part of the appeal, and the appeal of Donald Trump is that they know he's so unlikable, so they see him as just this, they see him as just like counter to the status quo. Meanwhile, they are the epitome of the status quo.
And they're trying to prop up the status quo.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off.
Yeah, and not to say that Trudeau himself is particularly anti-status quo, but you know
No,
what I'm
he
saying.
just- he's,
You know.
like, the best I can say about Trudeau is that, like, he's not Harper. That's not
Yeah.
much of a compliment.
Yeah, and that's the best. Like, it's the same as the best you could say about Biden is he's not Trump.
Yeah.
It's
right?
not particularly a compliment. It's just a fact.
Yeah. Like, I wanted Leighton, but, he passed away from cancer. So,
Yeah.
like, we don't always get what we want. Sometimes we get Trudeau. Whatever.
Yeah, and that's what fuels this, and like that's why Aaron O'Toole would get a certain amount of votes no matter what. It would be because fuck Trudeau, and then especially fuck the NDP because they're just like liberals with more soy,
Yeah, he could. O'Toole could literally wear a Nazi flag and kick a polar bear cub in the face on national TV, and
they say he's a great representative of Canadian values. That's what they say.
it's like manly and yada yada whatever.
So yeah, that's that. So like I think understanding all the multifaceted angles that motivates people towards certain political ends is important to understand. Just as much as there's many people that are perhaps kind, reasonable, human individuals that support Trump or support bad politicians or bad political ideas for whatever reasons that they do. There's a time and a place to take a moment to understand that. But there's also a time and a place to take a moment to understand that this shit can just be nuts, and know where to pick your battles and where to recognize that this is happening, and what we can do in our culture to change it, because that's what it comes down to. It's a cultural difference in our moral values, and that's a difficult thing to conquer because it's generations woven, but we need to unpack it and understand it.
Yeah, Janie just said Trudeau plus status quo equals hearts. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And then like that would be the greatest, like in some sort of like conservative thread, if somebody typed that, like, in knowingly in sarcasm, that would get all the laughs, Yeah, that's the thing about conservative comedy. It doesn't have to be funny or clever.
It just has to be mean.
It just has to be mean.
Yeah.
Because that's strength, baby, and that's what's fucking hilarious, I guess.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move on to the last segment of the show, where we're gonna talk about the Netflix program Cuties.
Second to last portion.
Oh, second. Oh, yeah, second to last portion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, so to kind of put this into perspective here, It originally began this trouble with the film because it came out at the Cannes Film Festival a while back to much critical acclaim, and then it got picked up by Netflix. And the problem began there because Netflix not somewhat, but they straight up did the irresponsible thing of almost marketing the film as some sort of pseudo pedo bait.
Yeah.
And
Like basically they did what the author of Lolita insisted never be done with his book covers. It's like he didn't want like
he wasn't trying to glorify what that story was about.
No, and yet a lot of the covers they're just like, what, can't hear you, blah blah. And so they have like these, lascivious looking images with young girls on the covers, which is completely counter to the point that the author is trying to make.
Yeah.
Netflix did pretty much the same thing with disregarding the movie poster for Cuties.
The actual original movie poster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then made up their own
Yeah.
to Netflixify it. But in doing so, like, completely missed the point of the film and made it really gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are like, aside from that, because like I think that was like the lens that people started to see it through.
Yeah.
Was they saw that marketing campaign,
that was their first
and from then on,
introduction to it, for sure.
movie bad.
Yeah.
Despite any new information that might enter. And that's, sort of the problem with how information can flow sometimes.
Yeah.
But people don't pay attention after that. They get the idea planted in, they view it through a certain lens.
Yeah.
And of course,
and honestly, like, I don't even blame people for viewing it from a certain lens. Like, I don't think that you need to watch every single movie that you have a negative impression on. I don't think that you need to spend your life reading volumes and volumes on every single issue. But if you're going to take a hardline stance of like what the movie is about, then you should probably actually watch it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be like, this squicks me and like I don't like the direction this is going in. But
sorry, I just wanted to pause this for a second because it was a throwback to the previous conversation that somebody blah 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 blah. Maybe people support Agent Orange because he has never started a war. I don't know if you're like trying to actually defend Trump there or not, because Agent Orange is kind of funny, but he has started a war. Like he has actively done warmongering activity, had people assassinated. Provoked those things.
Yeah.
So to say that he's anti-war is completely false. It's just that is
he keeps trying
that
to
is
play
factually incorrect.
He keeps trying to play chicken with North Korea. Like
I don't even know if that was necessarily start a war or just like beat his chest, because I think he knew that nothing would really come of that. But assassinating a general, maybe that pushed some buttons. When you participate in that activity, it's self-explanatory.
Yeah, on top of like.
But yeah, anyway, sorry, I didn't want to divert too much from the subject. Continue with what you were saying. I need to pop out to the washroom for a second.
Just to go on your point, that's ignoring like all the people that Trump has killed in the U.S. So let's not pretend that he doesn't have blood on his hands. Anywho, yeah. So what I'm saying about Cuties is that like, so I watched it, and it reminded me a lot of New Waterford Girl, which was like a 1997, I think, Canadian coming of age film, and like a lot of the stuff that girls grew up with is fucking ugly, like. Girls are hypersexualized. They're mimicking sexuality, not understanding what it is just because it's popular. And this absolutely isn't me being derisive of girls. They don't know any fucking better, right? And so it's really complicated trying to tell a story like that. And so the funny thing about what James was saying earlier about QAnon and right wingers, about them being in it just to like trigger the libs and pwn the libs, etc. I'm not gonna defend cuties just because QAnon hates it or is telling people to hate it. Like, I can see why a lot of people would feel uncomfortable and not like it, and I think that there's some valid criticisms around the age of the girls who are cast. Potentially maybe they could have used older girls for this. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in Hollywood or whatever. I'm not in movie making, but I think that there's a lot of valid criticisms about how this all came out that don't have to start and end with you need to like this movie just because of who created it, or you need to hate this movie or else you're pedophile or pedophile friendly, right? Like, I think those are really polar opposite positions that, like, they don't need to exist necessarily. Ginny says he's assassinated Iran's number 2 guy, and that only didn't start a world war because of intense intervention on the part of other countries. Exactly. Like, this guy's entire presidency is just about people madly scrambling and trying to keep him from, like, pushing the red button. Like, if they have that comical red button in the White House, like, I swear to God, someone's probably got to, like, slap his hand off of it every 5 fucking minutes. Yeah, his entire presidency has been about people trying to diminish harm, but oh my God, look how much fucking harm he's done anyways. This is awful. So anyway, he ran away. So I'm going to segue into our last segment. Last segment is just a check-in of we like to talk about these higher level political things of what's going on globally, but I think it's useful to ground it in what are you doing locally. So right now I have started the process of trying to purchase property because I want to start up a literal actual commune. Like I want to set up property so that other people can come live with me. And I can't afford to do that in Toronto. So that's one of the long-term things that I'm working on right now. I just adopted a kitten. So, that always helps the, karmic balance of the universe, I think. What else have we done for ourselves in our community lately?
I just wanted to pick up on where we were left on. Did we ever finish the Cuties review? Did you give your? Okay, you gave your review on that because I wanted to touch on it a bit myself. In looking at the example of other things, like you talked about Lolita, for example. Yeah. Exploring this subject matter is always uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you about a film that I saw that. Does a very good job of just that. Even just the trailer is absolutely cringeworthy in the subject matter that it tackles. But I'm here. I'm going to throw this up on the screen. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, if you are a disturbed individual and you wanted to get off on something by watching it, you could certainly do that with any number of things, including this film. And it's, I think I have this. Oh, there we go.
It's the new MacBook Pro. These are definitely for a clothing company, right? So why isn't anybody wearing a shirt? Who are you talking to?
I'm chatting, Dad. My friend Charlie from California. He's a junior and plays volleyball for his high school. He's smart and really funny. He's encouraging, he's sweet, and he thinks I'm beautiful. Hi, Charlie. Where are you? I'm sitting on a bench just outside.
Annie? What happened? How old is he?
I can't stop thinking about it. I'm angry I didn't know what was going on.
Will, you all right, buddy?
Maybe he didn't even like me.
You were attacked.
It wasn't like that. You don't even know him!
She is in pain. She needs you. I want this guy out of my house. I want him.
Oh. My life is ruined. Nothing's ever gonna be the same.
People get hurt. The only thing we can do is we can be there for each other when we do fall down to pick each other up.
So yeah, like it's another example of a movie that's difficult to watch because of its extremely uncomfortable subject matter.
Yeah, and honestly, Cuties covers a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Not the same way, but a little bit
Not
of that.
not
because,
the same way, but
Because, like, honestly, girls navigating the internet and older men is...
yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, if you... I feel like it's like a parallel to how people are choosing to view Cuties, that if it was incensed in our culture at this time, like the way, you know, QAnon has incensed our sense of anxiety and paranoia around the subject, if this was like the film at the time, I feel like people could take the narrative of, oh, this just reads as a playbook for teaching predators how to groom kids. Because if you wanted to have that takeaway from that film, you could.
Yeah,
but
it's from
that's
2011.
obviously not the point of the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to take like a bad concept away from something, it isn't that far a reach to do it if you're motivated.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah.
So that was kind of like the point I wanted to get at with that. It's like it even on a completely like lighter note, how, you know, so, and I wanted to kind of branch into this whole concept of media literacy and how we choose to read things and how we choose to understand the news and all this stuff. Like I was sort of incensed that for a while, even amongst Left Book and fellow leftist groups, that when you're talking about the stories behind Marvel Comics, which are, you know, notoriously progressive and liberal leaning in their values, when you have these people going, well, you know, the films glorify billionaires and Tony Stark and it glorifies the military and stuff like that. It's like, where are you getting that reading from? Nowhere in any of those movies did I get that sense that you know, the fact that someone like Tony Stark had the power and reach that he did was ultimately a good thing in all circumstances. You know what I mean? Like, he had to be like essentially Scrooged and terrified into even starting to do the right thing. You know, I could get into a whole diatribe about it, but what we choose to read in the media that we take in and the understandings that we choose to take away from it is oftentimes motivated by our ideology and our feelings at the time. And we should be cautious and aware of that. We should be conscious of it, that how much of our emotional energy is seeped in something. That doesn't mean that your emotional feelings about it aren't valid, but how much of it is motivating your reaction.
And like, what are you projecting onto other people?
Yeah, oh, that too. Because yeah, we found particularly with this movie, again, because it's such heated subject
100%.
matter, and it's very triggering. Like I find it
100%.
triggering, like even when I was going deep into the QAnon thing, reading about it all the time and just constantly like being kind of undated with that subject matter. It's just, you know, it's I don't think it's good for your mind, you know.
No.
It's yeah, like I didn't even want to bring up this particular film in the first place, but it was like, you know what, this has become much of enough of a thing in my news feeds that I felt something needed to be said.
Yeah, and like I got dragged into conversations about it from all sides, people who hadn't watched it, myself included. And so I'm like, okay, this feels stupid. It feels like someone should have actually watch it and see like like what is happening, because like when we're all trying to argue different sides with no one having seen it, I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I don't even know what I'm defending or why, which I find a completely untenable position. Because, you know, I'm not just trying to, you know, be contrarian by being like, no, it's fine, it's the best movie ever made. No, I'm just saying that it's not the evil that some people are trying to say it is. It does have a point. If you think that the director could have done it different ways, totally down with that criticism.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you want to criticize like how certain things were done, fine. But to say that it was, you know, made by the pedophile Hollywood cabal and
But,
this,
like,
they're trying to normalize this and like,
Even
you know,
saying
that sort of stuff.
How many fucking movies have Weinstein behind them?
Yeah.
Like, you can, like, I don't think I can in good faith see that anything in the Hollywood's not made by the pedophile cabal. Like, right? Like,
I mean, again,
can't
like
even hold
some
that
of the
position.
things that I try and tell people, it's like, well, wait till you hear about Bryan Singer. Read into that guy, the guy who directed the first 2 X-Men films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy who
who
directed,
keeps getting work. Yeah, he's done some gross things.
Yeah, the guy who directed Jeepers Creepers and Jeepers Creepers 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And even after he was convicted, he still got work.
Yeah.
It was
So,
it's
like,
nuts.
yeah, if you're going to try to say that there's a lot of, you know, horrific abusers.
It's a real problem.
It is a
It
real
is.
problem, right? It's just sometimes we can get sort of sidelined into, you know, what that means. Or
Yep.
maybe even we just have different
Sorry, so
interpretations of what it
I
means.
sort of got in there and derailed the whole
You did.
nuts and bolts segment there.
Yes.
But yeah, so let's try and pick up on that conversation again.
All right, so what the fuck are you doing with your nuts and bolts?
Well, recently I made a small donation to the NDP to get started as a volunteer. So yeah, I've volunteered my services to them in whatever capacity that might turn out to be. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And yeah, that's sort of how I've gotten the ball rolling for myself recently, is starting to think in that direction and be a little more you know, I think talking is good and doing this is sort of an action amongst itself, but to be a little more active in the community is that's important too.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I sent my niece a lockpicking kit and my sister some art supplies. Neither of which I purchased from Amazon. I purchased them directly from Canadian retailers.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, avoid shopping from Amazon if you can. And I know it's not the you know, the most logical choice for everyone at all times. I get it. We still find ourselves ordering the odd thing from there, but we avoid it as much as we can.
Yeah, if you can check other sources first, then please do that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, so like I know Nat here, she reaches out to people in the building here who are in need, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
Well, I mean, you know, we're all in this together, literally, when we're surrounded by the same walls. So I think it makes sense to get to know our neighbors and to, you know, try to be there when.
So yeah,
Maybe
try
that's
and like reach out to people. Don't alienate yourself from them, and that's you know, kind of touching on a little bit of what I was saying before about having sympathy or a sense of humanity about people who maybe have very different political ideas. I think if we can do stuff to enrich that sense of community, those political rifts are easier to navigate.
Yeah, and if we can live by example.
Yeah, and influence those people. Like I find when they are people worth talking to who are very different from us, it's not so much that they're set in their ways awful people. It's that, you know, they just had a certain amount of experiences that led them to a certain conclusion. And different experiences can lead them to different conclusions. So, you know, I think we should put effort into that where it can be done.
Yeah. I mean, if your neighbors are horrific, then, you know, protect yourself, stay away. But
actually, you know, sort of touch on something. I found myself in a bit of a discussion with some people from my hometown of Hamilton, where there's a bit of a tent city situation happening there. And, you know, these situations are complicated. They're not easy to navigate. helping the homeless it's a multifaceted issue entrenched in the status quo of how we intend or how we tend to do things. You know, like in this tent city or tent community rather that's kind of popped up. They've already gotten tons of people into shelters. And then I saw someone trying to argue that, you know, 100% of the people that they asked did not want to be in a shelter. Well, it's like, that's probably after all the people that did want shelter moved. And it's like, then you got to ask the question, why would a homeless person who's living in a tent community say that they don't want shelter? It's so easy to dismiss these people and say, well, they're nuts and they don't want help. And that is extremely short-sighted and dismissive and not solution-oriented. Ask the question, what would motivate somebody who obviously wants shelter to not accept better shelter? It's probably because maybe they have certain mental conditions,
But also,
past trauma.
what makes the way that cities provide shelters, what makes that a superior shelter to a tent where at least you have privacy?
Exactly. These are the important questions to ask. If you are depriving, say, if they're a drug addict, and if they're going to be put in a quote-unquote proper shelter where they're not going to be able to have proper access to their drugs, yeah, they're going to have a tendency to not want to go into that shelter because those drugs are a huge part of what their lives revolve around.
But also
and if you want to help
detoxing-
these people,
Yeah,
you have to
detoxing's
give
a medical
them...
issue. You can't just give them a cot with like 1,000 other people in a gym.
Look
and
at the
expect
Finland model of how they solved homelessness. For the people who are drug addicts, they basically let them have the drugs, and then they offer them all the support and counseling to get off of them that they need. But if you make it a prerequisite that these people who are suffering and in need in a myriad of ways have to meet a certain social standard, social standard to have access to basic care, then you're putting gates up to that basic care. Like, the only way to end poverty is to end poverty. If you create conditions around what person qualifies to not be in poverty anymore, you're not on the team.
Yeah, especially when shelters are basically set up very institutional, right? And so it's not a home. So if you want to get people housed, then give them an actual home.
Yeah, and great point also, Ginny. Women and trans people and youth also face violence in group shelter situations. Like, these aren't always better situations for these people.
No.
Even when the government says, "Oh, these shelters are great," it may not be.
But also, like, I don't think that shelter should be the long-term situation for anyone ever.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a home, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have privacy. You don't have a place for your possessions. Like, you don't have any stability.
Yeah, your
like,
sense
you
of
might have
agency is gone, and that's tantamount to a lot of or paramount to a lot of these people. That sense of agency.
And so then you might have a bed, but really, what else are you getting? What are you sacrificing? For that
if you
bed?
want to help them at their level. If you start saying that, like making up excuses like these people don't want help, it's like, no, you're coming up with reasons now not to help them. You're not being solution oriented. You're wanting to dehumanize them, and nobody likes to be accused of dehumanizing, because let me just say, when I said that, I got some negative reactions that what they were saying was a little bit dehumanizing. But it's like, that's what it is. You have to change your moralistic perspective on this situation, because again, trying to gatekeep who qualifies for basic human rights and who doesn't, you're already starting off on the wrong foot.
Anyway, TLDR, don't be an ass.
Yeah, so just reach out to your communities. I'm trying to think of, now that my brain has been on this subject, better ways to advocate for the homeless in this way, and what I can do to
we should
change that perspective.
We should brainstorm before our next thing about
Yeah.
ways to help the homeless community coming up to winter, because winter.
That's
is
partially why I'm, volunteering for the NDP too, because I feel they are in the strongest position to make strong social changes via social programs and socialistic ideas.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So we should figure out what kind of practical assistance singular folks can do just on a one-to-one level with homeless folks in the city to make sure that they survive this winter, because it's going to be a fuck.
Yep. There's the our Antifa duck to see us out. Yes, and this it's going to be weird to see this winter how things are going to go with COVID and how we're going to navigate that, and who's perhaps going to be left out in the cold and who's going to need help the most. I'm Jimmy Ruffian. This is my co-host Nat Prince. Thank you so much for once again watching another live stream of the Rough Report. I always love having Nat here. Hopefully she joins us for the next one. I feel the show just flows so much better with her here, don't you? I think that's all I got to say. So this is Jimmy Ruffian signing off. How about you, Nat?
Yeah,